Estoy embarazada. Asistí a la reunión. Actualmente vivo en México. If you're an English speaker, there's a good chance you understood at least one of those incorrectly. Why? Because these words look familiar, but they don't mean what you think they mean. Amigas y amigos, welcome back. This is Profe Juan, and by the end of this video, you'll understand what false cognates are, why they trick Spanish learners, and some of the most common ones you'll hear every day. And I, as always, tell you not complicated grammar, just how Spanish actually works, how Spanish is actually spoken, okay? One of the fastest ways to make a funny mistake in Spanish is to trust a word just because it looks like English. Sometimes that works, but sometimes it's a trap, and those traps are called false cognates. Let me remind you first, a cognate is a word that looks similar in two languages and has a similar meaning. Example, animal, hospital, hotel. Easy, right? But a false cognate looks familiar while meaning something completely different. That's where problems begin. The big idea is that false cognates create false confidence. You recognize the word, so you stop paying attention. And that's exactly when misunderstanding happens. Let's look at some of the biggest traps. And again, of course you do this because you want to, you look and you see this familiar face and you're like, you're tempted. Don't trust your gut 100% of the time, okay? Let's start with the most common one. I think I heard this so many times. Probably every single student once said this word, at least once. Embarazada. Estoy embarazada, and many beginners think I'm embarrassed. It's natural, but that's wrong. It actually means I'm pregnant. A very different situation. If you want to say I'm embarrassed, you would say estoy avergonzado o avergonzada. This is probably the most famous false cognate in Spanish. And here's another one that appears everywhere, especially in schools and workplaces. Asistí a la reunión. Many of you probably think, hey, I assisted at the meeting. Not quite. In Spanish, asistir usually means to attend. For example, asistí a la clase, I attended the class. Asistieron al concierto, they attended the concert. The English word assist and the Spanish word asistir are not the same thing. Now, let's look at a word that appears constantly online. Actualmente. Because you love to say this word. Actualmente vivo en México. You may be thinking, hey, actually, I live in Mexico. You're not right. Actualmente means currently or at the present. Examples. Actualmente trabajo desde casa. I currently work from home. Actualmente estudio español. I'm currently studying Spanish. If you want to say the word actually, that I love that word. Spanish uses en realidad or de hecho. Not just one word, it's like a compound word, okay? En realidad or de hecho. Look at this, let's talk about the next one. Realicé el proyecto. You may be thinking, hey, I realized the project, and that doesn't make a lot of sense. But we in Spanish, we mean I completed the project. I carried out the project. Does that make sense? Realizó un estudio. She carried out the study. Realizamos el trabajo. We completed the work. In English, realize is like to understand. In Spanish, we would say something like entender o darse cuenta, okay? Because realizar, it's carry out. It's very, very different, okay? Again, to say something like realize, in Spanish, we would say something like darse cuenta, me doy cuenta, te das cuenta, see? Again, it's not as easy as to realize, but it's how we do it. Let's move on. Let's talk about the word éxito. Tuvo mucho éxito. And many people, maybe you once or right now, may think like he had much exit because it looks well, not exactly, but a lot like the word exit. But éxito means success. La película fue un éxito. The movie was a success. Tu negocio tiene éxito. Your business is successful. The Spanish word for exit is salida. Salida. Notice the pattern. The problem isn't vocabulary. The problem is assumptions. The word looks familiar and your brain guesses, and that's completely normal. Sometimes the guess is wrong. And that's why false cognates are so dangerous. Not because they're difficult, because they look easy. If it looks familiar, just don't assume. Check the meaning. Examples: embarazada is not the same as embarrassed. Asistir is not the same as assist. Actualmente is not actually. Realizar is not realize. And of course, éxito is not exit. And that's the shortcut. Yeah, try to find them, to spot them. But something very important, hey, it's not always bad. Sometimes when you make this kind of mistake, you fall into these little traps, you find them, you understand them, and you're like, hey, that's funny. Probably I won't repeat that mistake again. The lesson is simple. Just because a word looks English doesn't mean it behaves like English. Again, don't stress out, like it's not a big deal. If you make this kind of mistake, you'll learn from it, okay? So I encourage you to start trying. Hey, maybe you say, hey, I'm pregnant more than once, and that's okay. I mean, if you're pregnant, it's fantastic. If you're not, ha 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 ha, move on. But now it's your turn. Write one false cognate and, try to make it funny. Try to give me an interesting example in the comments. I'll make sure to react, to respond to your comment, and maybe give you another that is funnier than that one, and hey, it's gonna be fantastic, okay? As I always tell you, one example is more than enough. Read all of them. Amigos, if this helped you avoid some classic Spanish mistakes, like the video, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Ciao!